This is Cash Content and Chaos, a podcast about money, entrepreneurship, creativity, and last but not least, sex work. We have honest and authentic conversations with people building real income in unconventional industries, without shame, without judgment, and without doing it alone. I'm Katherine Studley, founder of The Only Consultant and Prisma Tax Group. Let's get into it. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to Tax Basics for Dominatrices for BDSM. My name is Katherine Studley, and I'm the founder of The Only Consultant and Prisma Tax Group. I am a vanilla accountant by trade. So I worked in CPA firms, and I had a very bad time. I said, okay, I don't care what happens to me. I'm never doing taxes again. So I moved from Buffalo to DC, and I was working at a coffee shop handing out my cards. I thought I was going to get a job in sales. Accidentally got recruited by the CIA. Didn't want to do that either. So I worked there for a year. And then when the pandemic hit, I was spending a lot of time on social media, and I heard about OnlyFans. And I said, oh my God, they're going to need tax help. Everyone's going to get a 1099. I can do this. And I started advertising for OnlyFans models, judgment-free tax help, and it just kind of spawned into all sex work. So it's been 6 years now, and we have clients all over the sex work umbrella, working in person, online, and we have a lot of clients in BDSM and Kink, so that's why I'm here. I've actually learned a lot from the BDSM community. I always know if someone's in Kink because they're very respectful upfront about my boundaries, or even talking about boundaries. Like, that was not something that I'd ever really considered in my life, let alone in business. And if someone's in Kink, they're saying, okay, I know we have 30 minutes. It's 27 and a half minutes. I just want to wrap this up, be respectful of your time. So that's something that I really appreciate about the Kink community. And I know that Kink is all about creating safe spaces energetically. That's what I've collected. And so I want to do that for you here now. I know that taxes in business can be very overwhelming and stressful. There's a lot of embarrassment and shame surrounding the topic. So we can leave that at the door. This is a completely open space. There's no such thing as a stupid question, silly question. I will explain this as simply as possible. This is high level. We're not going to get into specifics on states and different, situations, because anything can happen in tax. This is just the basics, safe place. Feel free to ask any questions. And so now I have the tax firm, and I'm also a content creator. That's how I find all of my leads. Okay, so first of all, why should you file taxes? It's a difficult climate to convince anyone to file taxes, so I understand. But taxes are your buy-in to doing anything else that you want to do as far as adulting goes. If you want to invest, get a mortgage, a credit card, you have to have proof of income. And also, you can qualify for different tax credits and deductions. If you're earning self-employment income, you can write off your business expenses, file for unemployment, set up retirement plans, all of that fun stuff. The buy-in, step one, is to file your taxes. From the top, what do you need to file taxes? It's your first time filing. Where do you start? Gather your information. So that's going to be, it depends on where you're earning your income. So if you're earning income in cash, Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, if you have 1099s, you have to total all of these and total your expenses, your annual expenses by category, which we're going to get into. And it depends on your income streams. So if you're also selling real estate and you're working as a dominatrix, those are two separate income streams. You'd have two separate lists of income and expenses for those. And then the 1099s, it depends on what platform you're on, or if anyone else is issuing you a 1099, we need your ID. If you have an LLC, we need your LLC formation documents, and then any other documents that are relevant to your tax situations. That's going to be W-2s, a mortgage interest statement, tuition, whatever else you have going on. And if you don't know what you have going on, or you think that you've misplaced something, you can always log into the IRS account, irs.gov/account. You can log in with your social security number, and it has a summary in that portal of your whole tax story. So you'll be able to pull up old 1099s, W-2s, filed returns, if there's notices, any payments. So that's a good hack if you're not sure where to start. So as soon as you start earning self-employment income, meaning not on a W-2, so there's no withholding. So, if you have a W-2, you make $30 an hour. By the time you get paid, you really made 25. Well, what the hell? Where'd it go? Your employer is prepaying your taxes for you. When you're earning self-employment income, so if you make $1,000, you get $1,000 right then and there, you're considered a small business. And so you have to operate like a small business and start thinking like one. And that's if you're earning income again, if that's in cash, any third-party payment apps, and 1099s as well. This could also be a 1099K, depending. We're going to talk about the importance of separating your business and personal income. This is like the most important thing you can do actually from the start. We'll go into write-offs, and then we're going to touch on a little bit of tax strategy. There's way more tax strategies to talk about, but we're just going to talk about the basics just to kind of give you an introduction here. The day you start earning self-employment income, you want to separate your business and personal income. So it all kind of seems like personal income, but the 1099 stuff should be separate from your W-2 stuff. So you should start a separate personal checking account. You do not need an LLC to file business taxes or take any business write-offs. And you should start a separate Cash App or Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, whatever, and hook it up to the separate personal checking account that you have. You don't want to mix the two. So when you're going to buy something for business, you're using your business debit card or credit card, and then vice versa. That one small thing is literally going to change your life later, and it sets a foundation. And if everything's mixed, it's not the end of the world. You can also undo that. It's a little bit tedious, but it's just organizing everything. Bank account. I would do a separate personal checking account. There's a big discussion, obviously, about banking discrimination in this industry. So it depends a lot on where you live. Sometimes small credit unions are the move. Sometimes they're not. I would say wherever you're doing banking currently, if they haven't given you any issues, you could just open up a separate personal checking account right there and just transfer the money to your personal, which we'll talk about how the cash flow is going to work. So you can use a major bank, credit union, online bank. But if you're earning income in cash, obviously the online bank wouldn't work as well. You want to link a savings account to it. You're going to transfer money to save for taxes. Then you're going to hook up the different payment apps as well. So here's the cash flow, how this would work. You have your new separate personal checking account that you're using only for business. So what goes into that account? This is related to kink only, right? So if you're also in real estate or you're an esthetician, you would lather, rinse, repeat this for the different income streams. So you're going to deposit your cash and your 1099 income into that bank account. Also, if you're getting tips from different payment platforms, that's what gets deposited in. And what does not get deposited in is W-2. That goes to your actual personal account. That's like where you're paying your rent out of. And then what's coming out of your business bank account is business expenses. The business expense is the same thing as a write-off. We're going to go into this, but that's when it's really important that you're using that separate personal account for the write-offs. You can organize them later. And then when you want to pay yourself, you'll transfer money from this bank account to your personal account, and that's how you're paying yourself. And then what's absolutely not coming out of this would be personal expenses. So that's like, lunch with your friend, anything too personal in nature, things that have nothing to do with your business. So the IRS allows independent contractors to write off business expenses. That's why it's used interchangeably. This is a great slide to take a picture of. Feel free. So the rule is you can write off expenses that are ordinary and necessary to you earning self-employment income. Can't be lavish and it can't be personal. So in this industry, there's kind of a gray area, right? Because to an extent, you're monetizing your personal appearance, but you don't want to go over that line. So you still have to play within IRS rules. So valid tax write-offs for kink would be events and seminars. DomCon's a write-off. That includes your travel, your hotel, your tickets, networking while you're here, the works. Uniforms and costumes, leather, latex, whatever you are wearing to earn self-employment income. This is going to be considered your uniform. So when we do your taxes, that's what we would write. We wouldn't write latex, we'd write uniform. Props, supplies, implements. This is this includes sex toys. This includes anything that you are using in sessions or in the dungeon. Then you can also write off your home office, because where else would you be tracking everything than at your home office if you don't have one, a brick and mortar? So that would be a percentage of rent and utilities. So it's done based on a percentage. Let's say that your apartment's 1,000 square feet and the space that you use to track your income and expenses is 100 square feet. So that's 10% of your living space is considered a write-off. So then that's 10% of your rent and utilities. And then also your phone bill. If you are using your personal phone to talk to clients, then you can write off a portion of that. If you have a separate line for work completely, then you would write off the whole separate phone, including the hardware and the service. Your tax preparations are write off, as well as your bookkeeping. If you have an LLC formation, all expenses surrounding maintaining your business, like professional services, consider a write off. And that includes continuing education too, courses, classes, ebooks, if you're paying for mentorship. Anything that's helping you refine your skill and get better at your work is considered continuing education. Have you ever felt like tax season was designed to make you stressed? Let's face it, your income doesn't show up as tidy as a W 2. Instead, it's split between cash, apps, and constant fees. Whereas most accountants see this as chaos, I in fact know that it's my expertise. Here at The Only Consultant, we meet you where you are and transform confusion into clarity and confidence. The Only Consultant specializes in accounting for sex workers and creators. I designed this firm to turn tax season from panic to power, giving peace of mind to hustlers like you. We help you stay organized, feel confident, and remain in control of your money with judgment-free support and simple systems. We handle all the complicated stuff such as tax prep, bookkeeping, and compliance support so that you don't have to. The result? The feeling of empowerment that comes from being fully in control of your bag. You don't need to wait until April. You can go ahead and start today. Simply go to theonlyconsultant.com and book your consultation now, because peace of mind should be part of your hustle too. So your monthly health insurance premiums are a write-off too. That's something that a lot of clients miss. So I'm going to say it again. Your health insurance is a write-off if you're self-employed. That can really add up. Also your travel. So that's, like I said, to different events, to different sessions, hotels as well. So if you're staying in your home city, but you're working out of hotels doing sessions, those are considered a write-off. Same thing with dungeon rental and photography. If you're running background checks on potential clients, any makeup that you're using only for work. So I got to tell you that you should have two separate bags of makeup, one for business and one for personal. How would the IRS know that? I don't know, but I'm registered with them and that's what I have to say. So I would just say, don't write off all your makeup, just like make it make sense. I would probably have my personal makeup be from CVS and my business makeup be from Sephora. And then you can also write off any dry cleaning, any collab or assistant pay if you're paying anyone out. If you pay them over $600, you have to issue them a 1099 at the end of the year. That's another story, but whatever you're paying someone is a write off. And then as well as storage, VPNs, video editing software, anything tech subscription related as well, production equipment, and business meals. Business meals are only 50% a write-off. They changed it a couple years ago. But just make sure you're using your business card for that. Okay, and that's the big sign. All of this, you're using your separate account. If you happen to use your personal account, it obviously happens. Just keep your receipt or your personal bank statement. You can add it in later and save your receipts. So when you work with an accountant, we don't need to see every single receipt. You need to have all of your receipts in case you're ever audited. What are the odds of that? I can't say. But if you're audited, you definitely want to have your receipts, and bank statements count. So again, isolating all of your expenses to that one set of bank statements, you can prove those in case of an audit. Like we have clients, if someone gets audited, you can send in the bank statements and highlight the expenses to prove those write-offs. And then find an organizational method that works for you. Don't be hard on yourself. Be realistic. If you love paper, use a folder. It's totally fine. If you love digital, put it on your desktop, somewhere in the Google Drive, whatever you can realistically continue to maintain. That's the beauty of being self-employed, is that you can develop and use systems that work for you. Want to dive in a little bit to the business versus personal. So the main question that we would ask clients is, under IRS audit, do you feel confident that you could prove this is a business expense and used only for business? If the expense is more personal in nature, you run a risk of having to pay it back if you were ever audited. So things that you like absolutely cannot deduct: gym fees, meal prep services, lash and hair extensions, anything that's permanent and like stuck on your body. So wigs, write off. Press on nails, write off. You could write off acrylic nails if that was like, if you were an exotic dancer and it was mandated by your club that you had to have a French manicure, which sometimes they do, then it would be a valid write off. If you have a custom request where someone's saying, I want a session with you, but I need you to have long black nails, then that would be a write off. You have to save the proof of that though. But otherwise, press on nails, no cosmetic surgery that's stuck to your body, Botox fillers, boob jobs, BBLs. You could probably swing uh, breast augmentation if that was your niche or your fetish. We'll talk about one IRS court case where they actually did allow a breast augmentation. Travel and transportation, so you can deduct travel expenses in relation to a temporary work assignment. So if you live in Houston and you work at the same dungeon every day, those miles are not considered a write off. But if you work at multiple dungeons in Houston, now it is considered a write off because you're working at multiple locations. It's not your permanent location. This would go for exotic dancers too. If you're in multiple clubs, then the write off. Yeah. Clothing. So it's considered your uniform, right? I think I talk about in the next slide. There was a case where um, a news anchor wrote off all of her dresses that she wore to anchor the news, which you would think, okay, this counts as a write off, right? This is valid. Why would you have all these dresses otherwise? But she got audited and had to pay back like $16,000 because they said, you can actually wear that in your personal life. You can wear that as a civilian, so it doesn't count as a write off. So keep that in mind when you're writing off business clothes. Body modification, we went over this, but one time in 1994, Cynthia Hess, Chesty Love, they let her write off her boob job because it was extraordinarily large, 56 double F. So that was, like it gave her like back problems. Like that was definitely considered like fetish size, truly only for business. That's the only one I've ever seen pass. And I've seen people audited and had to pay back $41,000 in like cosmetic procedures plus penalties and interest. So it does sting. And then, yeah, don't push it. So this is talking about again, it was 16,000 she had to pay back the news anchor, and then an additional penalty of $3,300 on top of that. Makeup, we talked about this again. Appearance, that's like wigs you're wearing, clip-ins. You should have a separate bag of makeup, but and then understand the risk of deducting your personal expenses. So you could definitely be audited. The IRS, the government's closed, but they are still sending letters out and they are still expecting payment. Then you have to pay the tax on it again, right? So if you took it as an expense, now that's not valid. So then you have to pay the additional tax that you would have had to pay plus the penalties on it. And the penalties rise and fall with the treasury. So it definitely can add up. Your tax preparer, if you're working with an accountant, can guide you on what's considered a write-off, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. So I have clients, I'll say I don't think, unless it's something really ridiculous, but if they swear to God up and down it's a write-off, it's your taxes. I'll keep the correspondence, the proof on our end. So if you're ever audited, we can say we did our due diligence. We can guide you, but ultimately it's up to you. It's your tax returns. It's in your social security number. And then talking more about meticulous record keeping. Any system that works for you. If you love a journal and a calendar, then that's it. Do it by hand. If you want to keep it in your notes app, if you want to use different apps, QuickBooks is like the gold standard to have financial statements. It's not extremely user friendly though. If you're making, under 150,000, you could do it in a spreadsheet. Once you make over that, I highly suggest using QuickBooks and a professional bookkeeper. So you are taxed on your profits, which is your income less your expenses. So I have an example here. So let's say, as an example, you made $54,000 in self-employment income related to Kink. So that's between cash and 1099. And then you had expenses, $2,000 in clothing, $1,000 in travel, $1,000 in photography. That would have your net self-employment income, $50,000, also known as your profit. And that's what you're actually taxed on. But then I have a sign here, no round numbers. So when you are recording your expenses, you want to record the actual number down to the dollar. The cent doesn't matter as much. But think about every time you swipe your card, it's not usually in round numbers. You're not spending, it's not $100, $200. That's a big IRS red flag. The AI can definitely pick that up if your Schedule C is all round numbers. So make sure you're being very specific in how you're tracking things. So here we have a tax form. Talk a little bit about the individual tax return is your 1040. That's what you're familiar with. If you have a W-2, it's what you file. It's due April 15th of the following year. So the 2025 tax return will be due April 15th of 2026. Your self-employment income goes on that same tax return. You don't have to file a separate one unless you have an LLC with two owners or you have an LLC that's taxed as an S corporation. That's a different conversation. Just know if you have a single member LLC, you're just the only owner of it, or you're earning self-employment income, tax treatment is the same and you file still on your 1040. And it's called Schedule C. It's a profit and loss from your small business. So you might be familiar with the first couple pages of the 1040. It's what you usually review when your accountant sends it to you. And then behind, there's all kinds of paperwork and like supporting documentation. Schedule C is one of those documents. So it lists your income on line 1, then your expenses in the middle, and then your self-employment net income at the bottom. And the self-employment net income, your profit, flows to the front page of your 1040. So at the top is, this is all your basic information. Line 1 is your W-2 income, and then line 8 is your self-employment income. So that's just kind of how it flows together a little bit. Best practices, you want to save 25% for taxes. This is a blanket number. It depends on what state you're in. It depends on all kinds of, various things related to your tax situation. But in short, you want to make sure that you're always saving for taxes because you're going to owe if you're self-employed. That is just the nature of the beast. That's just how it is.
Does tax season leave you anxious, sorting through receipts, or worried you've missed something important? You're not alone. And that's exactly why I created the Only Consultant and Prisma Tax Group. My goal is to meet you where you are and give you judgment-free solutions that make financial management simple, clear, and stress-free. At The Only Consultant, our services go beyond just tax preparation and filing. Taking the confusion out of money starts with the basics, aka education and bookkeeping. We can track your income and expenses, which means you'll never have to scramble for receipts ever again, and you will fully understand what is going on. Additionally, I offer monthly subscriptions and ongoing guidance. With monthly support, you'll always have an expert in your corner, giving you real-time answers, steady organization, and the peace of mind that lets you focus on your hustle and not the paperwork. We specialize in tax preparation and filing for sex workers and creators. When it's time to file, I handle your federal and state returns, maximize your deductions, and make sure the right forms get submitted for your unique income streams. The benefit? You save time, avoid mistakes, and walk into tax season feeling confident. Last but not least, we provide compliance and business consulting. So whether you need help setting up your business, staying compliant, or navigating something intimidating, I've got you covered. Instead of second guessing, you'll feel confident, supported, and ready to grow with someone who understands your hustle. And here's the best part. You don't have to do it all. You can choose the services that fit your needs right now, or let me and my team at The Only Consultant handle everything from start to finish. Either way, you will receive the clarity, respect, and financial confidence that you deserve. So if you're ready to feel in control of your finances, whether it's this tax season or all year round, head to my website, theonlyconsultant.com, and click contact. Or you can always find me on social media, Instagram and TikTok at _only_consultant. Click the link in my bio and contact me there. We look forward to meeting with you.
So if you are saving throughout the year, then you'll have money to pay for it. You should be making estimated quarterly tax payments. It is not a separate tax return. You still only have the one tax return requirement on April 15th, but you can go onto the IRS website and your state website and make an estimated tax payment throughout the year. Make sure it's applied to the correct tax year. And then it's basically a credit when you go to file your taxes. So instead of owing so much, and if you overpay, you get a refund. And if you overpay, they give you interest back on that refund too. And then best practices as well is to open up the separate bank account. Talked about this a little, but I want to say it again. You do not need an LLC. I'm not an attorney. This is tax advice, not legal advice. But an LLC stands for a limited liability company. It protects you if you are sued or go bankrupt, but it does not change your tax situation. If you have an S corporation, you need an LLC first, and then you can make the S election after that. And then you're taxed differently and you can pay yourself on a W-2, whatever. But the day you start earning self-employment income, you do not need an LLC. Protects your personal assets. You need one if you're going to open up a true business bank account. Like if you go to Chase and you want like the business banking, you need that EIN number, which is like a social security number for your business. But the day you start earning self-employment income, you don't really need it. And then should you form an S corp and issue yourself a W-2? There are pros and cons to doing so. This really depends on your unique tax situation. High level, it's beneficial if your profit, that's your self-employment net income, is consistently around $60,000 consistently year after year. And then you can pay yourself on a W-2, you can pay yourself a reasonable salary, and you can also continue to distribute money to yourself by transferring it to your bank account. But it does complicate your tax situation. It requires a separate tax return to be filed. It's due March 15th instead of April 15th. And then you still have to file your individual tax return as well. You should have tighter bookkeeping because you're a S corporation. And unfortunately, I do see it where people will get real excited about being self-employed and they start the S corp instantly and it doesn't help them. And it actually costs them more to maintain the entity than the tax savings. And that sucks because then you're doing compliance for nothing. It's actually costing you money. So because you have to pay for the separate tax return to be filed. It's usually more expensive. So like our firm, our individual income tax returns start at $750. S corp returns start at $1,200 and up. And then you have to pay to run a W-2 to yourself, like maybe $100 a month. So it could be like $3,500 a year. So you want to make sure that the tax savings outweighs the expense. If it's going to save you 15 grand in tax and cost you 3 to maintain, okay, that makes sense, but you just want to make sure it makes sense. So I would say don't start an S corp on your own. Talk to an accountant first. Even if you want to keep doing your own taxes, it's fine, but just get someone's blessing before you make the S election. We are accepting new clients. We can help you with tax preparation, consulting, LLC formation, the works. We work with people on a monthly subscription. Just depends on what level of service you're looking for. And you can find me on social platforms at the only consultant, the_only_consultant. Questions. We also don't have to do this publicly if you want to talk about your tax situation in private. Yeah, I got it. I understand. Yeah. I know. No, I know. Yeah. I understand though. I get it. I mean, we're never taught about it in school, right? And I like cried all through tax class. I felt very personally victimized by taxes. So I am very happy to make this digestible for everyone. And this is the only way that I would do taxes is to work with like creative, fun people. So thank you for coming and trusting me.
Thanks for listening to Cash Content and Chaos. If you had fun, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who would love it too. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at TikTok at the_only_consultant. And I'm also on X at the Only Consult. I will be back with more real talk on money, entrepreneurship, and life to remind you that you don't have to figure it out all alone. Be well, guys.